Hey, this is Nick Millivoy.
And this is Jason Shadrick.
And this is the 100 Guitarists podcast, where each week we are talking about one of the 100 guitar players that we think you should know. Today we're talking about the loud, the mighty J Mascis of Dinosaur Jr.
Some of the best hair in rock, honestly.
Undeniably.
The gray looks great on him. And some might say a top 5 all-time guitar player.
Who's that? Who might say that?
I don't know if we're going to name names, but they have put it in print. And for those that know. And that's all I'll say about that.
All right, fair. Well, before we talk about Jay, we want to thank Voodoo Lab for sponsoring today's episode. Both of us are big fans of Voodoo Lab products. I have a Pedal Power Plus on my pedal board right now. Voodoo Lab has a legacy of excellence and innovation. They've been designing and manufacturing professional electronics for recording and touring artists since 1986, and they're a pioneer and leader in pedal board power. Voodoo Lab Pedal Power was introduced as the first commercially available isolated power supply for guitar effects back in 1996, and it remains the industry standard today.
It also has unmatched performance that pros trust. Even under the worst AC line conditions, the pedals will sound and perform best with pedal power. I would imagine you can throw a dart at any one of the rig rundowns and probably you won't take too many to find a Voodoo Lab pedal supply. And they are handmade in the USA. Every Voodoo Lab product is built one at a time in Northern California with the finest materials and rugged reliability. So thanks again to Voodoo Lab. We'll have links down below where you can check out all their pedals and power supplies.
All right. So J Mascis, best known as the guitar player for Dinosaur Jr.
Yes.
I think that we, as on, I think there's a Venn diagram of our episodes where it's like stuff that I like, stuff you like, and overlap. And I think our overlap is actually quite large. But I wonder, this definitely falls closer to my side of that diagram, to my circle, than it does to your circle, if I am correct.
Yes, I've been aware of Dinosaur Jr. and J Mascis for a long time. I've discovered I had heard a couple songs. He was even on the cover of Premier Guitar once upon a time.
That's right.
But it wasn't until preparing for this episode that I really dug in and checked out more than the hits. Okay.
So I'm very interested to hear what you have to say. What I'll say about my experience with Dinosaur Jr. is I sort of came to Dinosaur Jr. at a time when I had already developed a lot of stuff I was working on, influences that I was sort of like trying to work through in songwriting and stuff like that while I was, putting college bands together and stuff like that. And what I discovered was that we have a lot of similar influences because I wrote this song and I forget what year of college, maybe my second year of college, and wrote this song, made a 4-track recording, and I remember my guitar teacher being like, "This sounds exactly like Dinosaur Jr." I was like, I've never heard Dinosaur Jr.
This kid's a savant. Let's get him a scholarship.
And he lent me a copy of Dinosaur Jr.'s "You're Living All Over Me." And I remember putting it on and being like, this sounds exactly like what I'm trying to do. And it was because it was trying to do like...
Did you ever give that album back? No.
I did give it back. But it's like the Neil Young thing that I'm really interested in. It's like he sounds, Jay sounds very influenced by Neil Young and is very influenced by Neil Young as far as his songwriting and his play. A lot of Neil Young in there, and loud volume, sort of punk energy, stuff like that. And so when I came to them, it was sort of this self-evident thing. This is not to say I mastered sounding like J Mascis. I certainly did not. It was just like a very obvious thing that sounded like I was trying to do a version of Dinosaur Jr. as a college kid. And it was like a self-evident thing. I heard it and was just like, yes, this is exactly what I'm trying to do. This is my new favorite band. And it just made sense for me. It just fell into place. I think we all probably have those things where you hear something, you hear a guitar player for the first time, and it's like exactly what you need at that time, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, we've done episodes on several of them.
Yeah.
And we'll do episodes on several more.
So this was just one of those situations for me where it made sense. Now, at the time, this was a tricky time to be a budding Dinosaur Jr. fan, because Dinosaur Jr. first 3 records, Dinosaur, You're Living All Over Me, and Bug, were released on SST Records. SST was Greg Ginn from Black Flag's label, notoriously out of print at the time. A lot of SST records, but especially these Dinosaur Jr. records. So I was going to use CD stores, looking for copies of this stuff for a long time, trying to get people to find who had a copy and burn it for me. So I burned my guitar teacher's copy of You're Living All Over Me. Eventually, not too long later, a few years later, Merge reissued that stuff and it finally came out. But this was like some sort of like mythical stuff at the time. Now, the rest of the discography beyond those first 3 albums, that was available, but as we'll talk about, those are a little bit different as far as like how the music is formulated.
Yeah.
But those first 3 records, chasing that stuff down and hearing that stuff for the first time, this is a very exciting thing for me, and it just really fell into place. So I'm curious now, like I know how, so that's me as a 19-year-old hearing J Mascis for the first time was this like revelatory thing. It was it's just so obvious, like, oh, you can play guitar like that, I should play guitar like that. Hearing, so you basically, what you're saying is you heard You're Living All Over Me for the first time like the other day?
Knowingly, yes.
Yeah. So how does that land on you?
Is that the album you recommended to me?
That
No,
is,
you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the one you told me.
I've recommended a couple songs and stuff, but the album wise, I said that's, if you hear that's the
right?
album.
So when you told me to listen to that record, I started listening to it, and I honestly said, I don't know if I'll be able to make it through the record.
You did say that.
However, I started to then jump around to some songs in their discography.
Okay.
I basically went to iTunes and was looking at, top songs or whatever. And I'd realized that there was one that I had heard before, which is probably their most famous song, which was what again?
Feel the Pain.
Feel the Pain. Right. Exactly. That one I dug. I definitely heard it. Heard that before. Interesting Cure cover on that record. But the sound and stuff that I felt like I was going back to, because to me, I wasn't real too connected with the different albums and eras, was the stuff on Bug.
Okay.
Let It Ride, Freak Scene, No Bones.
No Bones that's a real favorite for me.
Yeah. Like I found myself going back to Bug more than You're Living All Over Me. But I do feel like you said those first 3 records are kind of almost viewed as one entity in a way, right?
In a way, they have their own personalities for sure. I think, like for me, it's You're Living All Over Me, and again, that might be because it's the first one that I heard.
Yeah.
There's a progression. To me, Dinosaur is a cool record, but they sound as young as they are on that one. Like it's cool, but they're kids. I mean, Dinosaur came out in 85, right? And Jay was 19 or 20 years old, so it's like they sound like that. They're college age kids. You're Living All Over Me is only 2 years later, and Bug is 1 year after that in 88. But there's a development there. You change a lot in those years, and you really develop a thing. So to me, there is a progression. I think by Bug, I mean Bug is great. I think it's I totally understand liking Bug more than You're Living All Over Me.
An interesting thing to me is what I've kind of perceived as Jay's and Dinosaur Jr. style. I completely informed by watching his rig rundown, seeing the pictures of the amps, the full stacks pointing at his head.
Yeah.
Knowing that he has an affinity for Jazz Masters and Teles. So all that stuff. And also, side note, my closest encounter with J Mascis, which I don't think I've ever even told you this story. But years ago, I found myself in LA, downtown LA. And I spent the morning at Steve Vai's house and then spent the afternoon at Bob Bradshaw's workshop.
Okay.
And we were filming an interview with Bob Bradshaw, which is on YouTube. And and his shop was very, his workshop was very just cluttered and just stuffed pedals and boards and everything everywhere, amps and stuff. And I walk around the corner of this place and I see this massive pedal board with so many pedals on it.
Uh-huh.
And I'm like, wow. And he was working on this or that. And I was like, what's this one? He's like, oh, that's J Mascis' pedal board.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh, wow. Because this was before we did a rig rundown. So again, I knew the name, couldn't tell you a song, but that was kind of lodged in my mind that, okay, so he's a jazz master player who plays very loud, probably has hearing issues, and plays with more pedals than the typical worship guitar player. I mean,
yeah.
It was, and enough where he needed like a Bradshaw switching system.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which I don't hear that even on the newer records. I mean, you can kind of tell when people are using a lot of pedals or whatever. I don't hear that as much in his sound.
I don't hear a lot of pedals in his sound. I would say, if we want to talk about just his sound now, like the biggest parts of his sound, it's funny. So a few years ago when we did the cover story on Jay, it was when his Fender signature Tele came out. And that blew my mind because I had never heard the Dinosaur records as Telecaster guitar records. To me, I totally believed that was all Jazz Master. Who knew? Not me. Somebody knew, not me. So that surprised me. But so, I guess I hear it. To me, I still hear it. And I'm like, man, like live, he plays Jazz Master. That's what it sounds like to me on the records. But sure, he plays a Telecaster on a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
All right. But I mean, I guess I can put it together on here and there, but not predominantly. But when I hear Jay's sound, I hear volume is the main part. And I think the main part to the point of when you listen to Dinosaur Jr., it just sounds better if you listen to it loud. Seeing them live, we can get into seeing them live. I've seen them live a few times. I can talk about that in a minute. But seeing them live, it's going to be loud. That is the way to see them. Listening on a record, it was recorded loud. I like Dinosaur Jr. more if I listen to it at a higher volume, at a higher than conversation volume. I don't like it as much listening to it quietly, which isn't to say I don't like it. I like Dinosaur Jr., but I appreciate it more when there's like the force of the volume and I'm getting that transfer of energy. That's the first thing I hear in his guitar tone. There's like, oh my God, this is a loud guitar, right?
You can tell they recorded loud. And I mean, we're not talking Kevin Shields level of volume, I don't think.
I don't think we are, no. Though those guys are buds and both like jazz masters and loud volume. No, we're not talking that level, but it's like probably for Jay where he stands on stage, it's that loud. And it is loud to see them live, but it's not, I don't think it's Kevin Shields. But it's like there is a sound pressure thing going on where speakers are distorted.
They came through town here in the last year or two. They were opening for somebody on a tour. Maybe because I'm sure they went to Philly on that tour.
Remember.
But yeah, I was tempted, but I think I might have had a gig. I would have gone and seen them just out of sheer curiosity.
Yeah.
I think at this point, spoiler, I was going to say it's the end of the episode. I would go see them live now after listening. I am more of a Dinosaur Jr. fan now than I was 2 weeks ago.
Oh, nice.
But I would. This might sound weird, but I feel like they've made 6 albums too many.
I think they've made a lot of albums. I think you're not wrong. I want to talk about the live thing, and I want to talk about their discography. But first, I just want to say, just to go back to talking about Jay's sound, it's like there's loud. I think I hear Jazz Master, but fine. It's a lot of his Telecaster, and I hear Big Muff and Marshalls. That's what I hear. I don't hear a million pedals. Like, there's some delay sometimes. There's Forget the Swan on the album Dinosaur has a great use of flanger where he kicks it on and it's like takes over the track. Awesome. I love it like here and there, but I don't hear massive pedal board unless it's just fuzz after fuzz after fuzz. I think You know, in the way, all right, so our last episode was on Trey Anastasio from Fish.
Our Lord and Savior.
You know, he's got a complex setup, but if I were reducing, I don't think it would be sacrilegious to say Languedoc, 2 tube screamers, and a pair of Mesa boogies. You
And
can
a compressor.
and a compressor,
Yep.
and you can get a Trey sound. It's like, to get Jay, sure, there's other stuff, and he's got to use it to feel inspired and do his thing. But I think if you get Jazz Master, pair of big muffs, you know, one set for rhythm, one set for lead, and a couple Marshalls, and just crank it the hell up, I think it's fine. I think he's going to sound like J Mascis.
Yeah. He was more of a he's more of a lead guitar player than I expected.
Oh yeah. He's mostly a lead guitar player.
Well, I mean, I know, yeah, he's like the guitar player, but I don't like, you think, you know, they came obviously in the early mid 80s, but kind of before alt rock was like a term, you know, and grunge and stuff, but he definitely plays more solos than his stylistic contemporaries, for sure.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I think that's the thing for me that really clicked at the time, is I was really into like lower fidelity, like 80s underground rock, hardcore indie rock, stuff like that. And a lot of that stuff doesn't have lead guitar parts. And I heard Dinosaur and it's like, this is awesome. Just these soaring heavy solos like that. And that it's like, you know, pentatonic driven bluesy rock guitar solos, not, you know, it's not metal stuff. It's not Greg Ginn. It's not like Black Flag, like angular stuff, which I also love. But this is this other, you know, he's just playing like rock guitar solos just with like a ton, like overdosed on distortion and volume. But yeah, I would say that guitar solos are probably the reason that Dinosaur Jr. exists. Like, the songs are there. I like his songwriting. But, or let me say this differently. All right, so let's talk about the discography, right?
Yes. There's different eras, I understand.
There's different eras. I can talk about the eras a little bit, but basically, like, I think that the songs used to be more different than they are, and that probably since they came back that was Beyond in 2007, they've recorded 5 full-length albums. They might exist to play more guitar solos for different things to solo on. I don't know that all those songs are, I mean, they're cool. They're still good songwriters, Jay and Lou Barlow. There's still great songs on those albums. But I think the point is like, jam out, play solos.
I give him a thumbs up on the album art.
Oh, album art's great. The aesthetic
album
is
art's always solid.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think they've ever put themselves on the cover, which is good.
No. On Green Mind, there's a kid on the cover smoking a cigarette, and I always thought that was supposed to be like a kid version of J Mascis. So that's the closest. All right, eras. You got the first 3 albums. They kind of go together. That's classic lineup: J Mascis, Lou Barlow, Murph on drums. Okay, after that transition album, Green Mind, that's Lou leaves the band. Lou's out of the band, and then Green Mind is mostly Jay. That's on a major label now. That comes out in 91. So that's when all these bands are signing major labels. It's mostly Jay. Murph's on a couple tracks, and there's a couple people here and there scattered, but that's mostly like a Jay record. After that, Where You Been? Now it's bassist Mike Johnson, and they're together for a couple albums for a few years there. Band ends by the end of the 90s. The band, Dinosaur Jr. is done. Jay's doing J Mascis in the Fog, other stuff here and there. And that's in that period is when I discovered them, and where the first 3 records are not available. The band is not together. I remember, this is going back to MySpace days, you know, following, or whatever it was called, being friends with Jay or following Jay on MySpace. And he'd put out like, I'm playing the North Star Bar in Philadelphia, free admission with a Marshall 4x12. So he's
Oh,
going to
so you
play a
brought a
solo. He was playing solo shows too. He's playing acoustic guitar.
Hold on. What you say? If
Amped
you
up.
would have brought a 4x12,
Yes.
he'd let you in for free.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it was like to a certain number, but it was like he wasn't traveling with as many amps as he wanted. It was like, you bring a cabinet. I remember seeing posts like, bring a cabinet. I'll let you in.
Okay, then I would be like, what's the cover? I'll pay the cover. I don't want to wheel a
Yeah.
4x12 to
Yeah. Let me save $12.
Yeah, I'll pay the $10, dude. Let's just play.
Yeah, but people wanted J Mascis to play their cabinet. But at the time,
or maybe he needed like 6 or 8 cabinets, right?
Yeah, he wanted as many cabinets as he could get, I guess. So at that time, I didn't see Jay. I saw Lou Barlow play solo. He had a lot to say about J Mascis that night. It got pretty gnarly. He was talking about J Mascis on stage a lot at the Khyber Pass in Philadelphia, and then it was like 2 months later they announced they're getting back together. And to me, that was the biggest. What's that?
I think he saw the look of disappointment on your face in the crowd and was like, "We gotta make this kid's day."
Yeah, right.
We've gone too far.
That was the biggest rock and roll announcement I could have heard was that they were getting back together. And I saw them on that tour. Beyond came out. I think Beyond is a very cool album. I'm into that one.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like they kept making records. I've listened to every one, I think. But it was like I liked Beyond. I spent time with Farm. Spent less time with I Bet on Sky. I sort of got worn out, and I don't know if that's my taste evolving, which, that's a thing. But I think they now the main, that version of the band has been together for so much longer than they were initially, that it's like they've just sort of proceeded to go. And it's like people go to those shows to see the old songs. But I'll listen to Jay play a loud guitar solo on everything. I saw them a few times in there, and I remember by the third time I saw them, it was like the first time they seemed like I couldn't tell if they liked each other. Jay and Lou had a notorious butting of heads back in the day, and that's all covered in Michael Azrad's book, Our Band Could Be Your Life. There's great stories in there. But I remember being like, I don't know if these guys like enjoy being on stage. They're not really like, there's not a lot of energy transfer, but that's sort of like what it is, And then I remember the third time I saw them, which would have been after Farm, I guess. Jay was no longer had his tuner in bypass, so there was never silence in the show. So a song ended, he just kept, and I don't know if this was like this at every show, keep soloing, still going. Eventually he stops, tunes his guitar full volume.
Tunes his guitar full volume.
Right?
Woo. The only other person I've seen.
1, 2, 3, 4. Jay never stopped making a sound with his guitar for 90 minutes.
Okay.
And I thought, this is a cool show, but there's like it's a little bit of a stinker vibe on stage, and that was the last time I went to see him.
I get so I've gotten the vibes, the studio records.
Mm-hmm.
I've not seen them live, so I'll slightly defer to your opinion on this. But the story you just told leads me to think the answer is yes. It's the age-old question.
Uh-huh.
We've asked it a million times on this podcast. Are Dinosaur Jr. a jam band?
I think Jay's the only one jamming like that. I think J Mascis is a jammer.
You've seen that clip of Sturgill Simpson, right? I sent that to you.
Oh yeah. Explain where he's talking about.
Right.
We're
not a jam band. We're a band that jams, type thing.
I don't think Dinosaur Jr. is a band that jams.
No, that's what I'm saying. I think Jay thinks he's in a band that jams.
Yes.
Right? Am I saying that right? Yeah.
Yep.
Because he just wants to rip solos.
He just wants to rip solos.
Man.
And like, good on you, Jay.
Oh, do their songs take different twists and turns live?
No. Well, they just rip through the song and just like it is on the record. And I mean, the twist and turn is that the guitar solos are longer, but they're over the same section. They don't really. And again, the last time I saw them live was I don't know when Farm came out. Farm came out in 2009, so would have seen them 2009 or 10, maybe 2011. But it's been a while. I guess there's some possibility. I've watched a lot of videos though. I don't think that they've evolved into a improvising rock ensemble.
I mean, you're not getting, a 20-minute version of Severed Lips one night.
No, I don't think you are.
Hey man, we're taking Sludge Feast deep tonight. We're going 15 minutes.
Here's a good jam. If you're into Jay and you want to hear Jay jam,
so yes.
What's that?
I speak fluent jam, so go ahead.
Yeah. On Mike Watt's first solo record, Ball Hog or Tugboat, they do Maggot Brain, and it's just Jay soloing. I'm not going to say I'm a J Mascis fan. I'm not going to say it compares to listening. I mean, I'd probably just go listen to Eddie Hazel play that, because that's the top of the mountain there. But you can listen to a lot of J Mascis playing.
I might dig that up and check that out.
It is pretty cool, as I recall. That hearing them do that is kind of awesome.
I'm looking over his other appearances. He was on. He sang lead on a Breeders tune called Divine Mascis. Band of Horses. Another Breeders thing. Mark Lanigan.
I got one for you. This didn't happen, but allegedly he was invited to be a member of Nirvana twice.
Do we need to get Buzzo in here?
Yeah.
Buzzo.
After talking to Buzz, I was like, I don't know if I want to say that, but I did look it up, and Jay says, I've seen this heavily reported places, but I found quotes of Jay saying, after Lou Barlow left the band, that was when Nirvana still had 2 guitar players, and Kurt was like, do you want to come be the second guitar player instead? And he said no. And I believe later they talked about doing something where Jay played drums on a track that didn't materialize in pre Dave Grohl time, because Jay's a solid drummer too.
Yeah. Dig it. Okay, what else do we need to cover here? We've talked about his sound, his style, jazz.
I would say the one other thing we didn't talk about, we're not talking about his rhythm playing at all or his writing at all, because the solos are such a big part of it. But one thing that I think is crucial.
Hold on, sorry. When you're playing in a trio like that, you kind of have to have everything has to kind of flow together.
Yeah.
And you're covering all the bases. You can't just take a break while somebody, and you got to have a soloing style that holds it together even when there's no rhythm guitar underneath.
Yeah. Well, that has a lot of credit is due there to Lou Barlow. Lou Barlow strums on the bass. He plays chords on the bass. So it's like solo sections. A lot of times, I mean, he doesn't exclusively do that. He plays bass lines, but sometimes, at least at some point, I haven't looked at what he's using like currently, but each of the times I saw him, his rig included a bass rig and a Marshall stack and a guitar amp. And he's playing, he'll play like a root note and a 10th above it to get like and strum them. So it's like behind Jay, there is kind of like a rhythm guitar feel going on, because Lou is such a strummy bass player, and Lou is a guitar player too. In his other bands he plays guitar, and he's a totally solid, awesome guitar player. But yeah, I think that it's like Jay's style is definitely like a single note lead style. This like punk rock post Hendrix thing that he's doing. But I think it's like filled up with just like sheer volume and feedback, and then Lou filling up the other space. And Murph is a really heavy hitting drummer that like is very propulsive. He's a very propulsive drummer. I love Murph's drumming. It's not heavy handed like a Bonham kind of heavy thing. He's got his own thing. There's definitely like a sound of Bonham in there, but he pushes. He's a punk rock drummer, I think, at heart, or at least in his sonically speaking. But the thing I want to point out is like with all that sound, right, with all that volume, and Jay also, he's not like, he's big open chords and a lot of sevenths, specifically major sevenths. A lot of his songs have major
the crunchy second.
Yeah. So like lots of harmony in there that's filling it up, and I think that's where you like the Kevin Shields thing kind of comes into play, that like pushing the harmony a little bit for the sound. You know, I like that about his playing a lot. He's a solid rhythm player.
It doesn't always have to be roots and fifths.
Doesn't have to be roots and fifths, and he's got good chord voicings too. So I think that is something that, and I'm guilty of it. We just spent all this time talking about Jay's lead guitar playing because it is the lead, it is the main story, but his chord writing is very cool. So if you're gonna listen to Dinosaur Jr., I would say that my favorite tracks, I directed you right to You're Living All Over Me. Maybe it's not the best place to go. Maybe just little fury things or furry things from You're Living All Over Me. That's the first track on there. The Wagon, the first track on Green Mind. I like a lot of first tracks. I'm just realizing. And
what's the first track on Bug?
Is it Freak Scene?
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the song Out There. That's probably my favorite Dinosaur Jr. song. All of these have great lead guitar playing. I like the Lung from You're Living All Over Me a lot. And Back to Your Heart is a Lou Barlow song. That's one of my favorite Dinosaur Jr. songs. But I don't know if that qualifies here because it's not really about the J contribution. Anything stick out to you?
Bug.
Okay.
Bug was the one I kind of kept coming back to. But I feel like I listen to one or two records, I get the vibe.
You get the vibe. You do, yeah.
It. Could you imagine? You remember, what do you call it when you were on tour and your buddies challenge you to listen to an entire discography above conversational level?
Yeah.
Could you do that with Dino Jr.?
In 2007, when Beyond came out, I would have loved that experience. I think that these days at this point, sorry guys, I would get a little bit tired near the end. But there are great songs on these albums. It's just not. Yeah, they're spread out a little bit more.
Dig it.
Okay, I think we did it,
buddy. We did it. We got through Dinosaur Jr.
We did.
And boy, do we have some exciting episodes coming up. We're not going to spill anything today, but I got an email today, Nick, about a guest.
Oh, do I even know about this?
You do. Is when we talked about. I'm not going to say it in public here. But I think things are looking good for that episode.
Okay.
You have to wear your makeup for that episode.
Yeah. All right. I'm excited.
All right. So thanks again to Voodoo Lab for sponsoring today's episode. They make the industry standard in isolated power supplies for your pedal board. They make great pedals. Head on over to Voodoo Lab. Get yourself some new power.
And
clean up that board.
And while you're doing that, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Subscribe to the 100 Guitarists podcast wherever you find your podcasts. And if you want to drop us a line, hit us at 100guitarists@premierguitar.com or send us a voicemail or text to 319-423-9734.
There we go.
We'll see you next week.
All right. See you next week.